Good morning. It's Tammy. This is May the 13th and I of 2020 and I wanted to talk to you about IEP, um, which is Individual Education Plan for your special needs student. An IEP is basically a plan of care for your student in the school system. An IEP is very important because it serves multiple purposes. The primary purpose of an IEP is to ensure that your child is receiving all the supportive assistance required for them to learn in the school setting. Um, an IEP, I'm just going to tell you straight out, you could have the best IEP ever. You could have thought it all out, did everything that you could think to do, wrote everything into it that needed to be written into it, had professionals assist you with that. But an IEP is only as good as the people who are carrying it out. So when I say that, I want to stress to parents that early on, especially in your elementary school setting and kindergarten, it is imperative that you have other people on your team, like your waiver case manager if you have one, a behavioral specialist if you have one, um, someone within the state system to come in and do visits and observe the classroom. You yourself can set up observations to make sure that things are going smoothly, and I highly recommend that that's done. A pop in is the best. However, most school systems won't let you pop in and do a visit. Some schools still will, but most don't. It just depends on how you approach it. And I'm not trying to tell you to trick the school, but what I am telling you is that your IEP is only as good as the people who carry it out. It is, you could write out a plan that's just phenomenal. It's a fantastic plan. It includes every single thing that would make your child successful. But if they're not carrying out what's written within the IEP, it it's nothing. It's just words on paper to make things look pretty. And you'll get your quarterly reviews and your annual review on how your child is doing, and it looks like, oh well, they're following this IEP, when in fact it's just on paper. So when you go to observe, or a professional goes in to observe, paraprofessional, some of the things that they should have before they even walk in is the IEP in their hand. The IEP is important because that's the rules and regs that you've come to the conclusion of within the school system and yourself and agreed upon by signing that they will carry out to meet your child's needs. So as they're observing, I recommend a full day. A full day of observation, you're going to be able to see your child's response to the teacher and the subordinate staff's interaction with your child. And you're going to know if they're doing something and the child's like, I don't even know what you're doing. You're going to see that even with your profoundly disabled children. You know your child. And hopefully your team knows your child well enough to know that they're confused to what they're doing. Or they're going to see that it's not being carried out properly. Now, what do you do with that information? If it's a great IEP and you've got a great teacher and a great school system and they truly are following the IEP, then there's nothing to do. Just be proud that everybody's working to support your child. If you walk in and you get a report back from your team or yourself and you observe multiple things or even one or two things that were very important that weren't being conducted, that's when you call for another IEP. Um, and then go over what was agreed upon and what you observed. Make sure you're taking down exact data while you're sitting there in the observation, and encourage your team members who are doing it to do the same thing. The date, the time, the name of the person, and what happened. Because without sound evidence, then you've got nothing to stand on when you go to approach the school system and let them know that you're not okay with how things are being conducted. Now, I will tell you, teachers are wonderful assets. We, they're It's a career, and most teachers choose that career because they truly deeply want to help other people. However, it's just like any other job. You get caught up in the mundane and you get caught up in your own routines, and you're human, so you have good days and you have bad days. It's very important that you have more than just one observation of what's going on in the classroom, because that one day you could take away just like it's fantastic, and then 3 other visits it's horrible, or vice versa. So make sure that you give them a little bit of slack, knowing that they're human too. But at the same time, your IEP needs to be followed, or your child is not going to succeed, and they're not going to get the things that they need to be successful. The next thing I want to encourage you to do is, within your state, you should have some kind of organization that assists families with mediation. Like if you want something written into the IEP and the school system's pushing against you, such as additional occupational therapy, additional physical therapy services, and they're saying, oh, well, that's not really something we do, and you know the rules and regulations under IDEA, then you need to get someone who knows the legal aspects in and bring them into the IEP with you. Sometimes just their presence alone will make your IEP go much smoother. I have utilized them on 3 different occasions early on in Leanne's IEP process. But once you get into high school, middle school, high school, IEPs are still very important. But the foundation of the education, the largest percentage of the foundation of the education that your child is going to need to be successful has passed. So what you're going to be doing is sustaining that education and maybe building more skills onto it, but they're going to be more geared towards life skills. There might be some academics involved, but usually people with an IEP have a lower IQ and or aren't able to be tested very well. They don't do well on testing, standardized testing. So there's no real measurement to what they're truly comprehending, and they may be getting a lot more than what they can test out of. An example, my daughter, she truly does understand a whole lot more than what she can test out for. And so I feel like it's important that they do hit on some academics, but when they continue to pound things that just are never going to be functional, it's time for you as the parent to step in and say, hey, I realize the state has certain regs and requirements for you to follow, but my child can't even do bathroom skills. So I want to focus on bathroom skills. I want to focus on appearance. I want to focus on hygiene. They're going to write that into the IEP, but the state still requires that they do certain other things. But you can also help determine how they're going to work on those skills, like math skills, for example. Giving a child a piece of paper and say, this many quarters, this many dimes, this many pennies equal this much money is totally useless. When on earth is your child going to, disabled child, I'm talking with an IEP, going to need to know that kind of math? They're not. They're going to need to know when they go to the grocery store if they're paying too much for something or too little for something, or not too little, too much for something. Hopefully it's always too little to save money, but they're going to need to know that $3.25 is more than $2.99, and that buying the $2.99 item that has the same amount, the same quality, is a better purchase. That's important, and that's math. So you can have that incorporated, that their math learning is done in a real life setting rather than on rote paper. Now, the paper portion of it may be necessary to help build the understanding of what a quarter equals or a dime, but you can gear that whole IEP to real life settings, because that's what they're going to need. Now, I want to talk briefly about a 504. A 504 is very important. What is a 504? A 504 is like an IEP, but it's for children who are higher functioning academically. Their IQ levels are higher. So, like a child with ADHD with some developmental delay, possibly a slight learning disability, or they just need more time with testing or whatever. A 504 is really important too, and it needs to be written precisely for your child, and you need to advocate heavily for your child, especially for child's Asperger's. Many children with Asperger's have 504s because their IQ levels are high enough to test. They're too high for an IEP. A 504 is important because it will follow your child to college. So it's imperative that it is written in the same intensity, with the same instructions, with the same outcomes as an IEP, but those are going to be for your higher functioning children and people who need extended time with testing. And a lot of times kids with 504s, the teachers don't even follow those rules and regs. The kids say, I need a little more time, and the teacher says, well, too bad. That's totally against the law, and your child needs to know that they have a 504. Explain it to them heavily. If you need more time with your test, don't just rush through your questions. Just tell your teacher you need more time, and if they say, well, you can't have more time, you only get an hour, you only get 30 minutes, then you make sure that your child knows to advocate. I have a 504, which says I can have extended time for testing. Sometimes 504s it's written in that the questions have to be read to the student because your student has difficulty with comprehension of what they're reading. And a lot of times teachers don't want to do that. They don't want to give the kid their 504 law. And that's where you have to step into the school system. And I would definitely bring in an advocate from someone at the state level to help support you with that, unless you're well versed in the law. Which you should be. If you're a special needs parent, you get a copy of the rules and regs, and it's pretty thick and it's really tiny print, but it's important that you read every single page. At least do that every year, every other year, to refresh your memory. And you can skim through the things that haven't been changed, but you should also sign up for emails that let you know when something has come into effect that changes IDEA. It's IDEA, and it's mandated that the school systems follow it. So that's my little rant for today on IEPs, and hopefully that gives you new parents and even the ones who currently have kids with IEPs that are in school some information and background. Have a great day.